what we're looking at is a gigantic failure to get folks to consider credibility of human who's making a statement, credibility of organizations, including companies and government entities. We're just failing to get people to take that sort of credibility into account when they determine what's real and what's not.
That is, like, in some publications, we actually formulated this as social erosion of trust. We also hope that some legislations and some actual laws that are stopping deepfakes from being spread, being generated, being trained, etc., may decrease the speed of the deepfakes a little bit, even if we cannot stop them.
Welcome back to your AI injection. This week, we're going to dig in on deepfakes. That's the tech we've all seen at videos like Tom Cruise or President Obama saying things they most definitely did not say. Today, we're speaking with Dr. Ilke Demir. Ilke got her PhD in CS from Purdue University and is currently a senior research scientist at Intel. Last year, Ilke released a publication about deepfake detection using a tool called Fake Catcher. I'm thrilled to have her on the podcast this week to learn more about deepfake technology. So thanks so much for being here. Please set the context for our discussion. What are deepfakes? Just at a very high level, like how do they work from a deep learning / AI perspective?
Right. So deepfakes are videos where the actor or the action of the actor are not real. So imagine me talking like this, doing all facial enactment, but it's not real. It's someone else playing me, or maybe it's my visuals, but my voice is synthetic, or it may even be just imagery-based deepfake. So any of those high-level people or celebrity videos that are not real, that are done with deep learning approaches, are mostly called deepfakes.
Tell us a little bit about why is this a topic? What happened in the last few years transformed the landscape? What changed in the machine learning world that allowed somebody to take this video of a major figure? Everybody's seen the Tom Cruise video at this point, where he looks like he's saying things that he clearly didn't say. What changed? What's making that happen now?
Right. As you know, we had Photoshop many years, right? We were able to edit videos, edit imagery. There are very talented artists out there that make us believe things that are not real. But the thing that changed, that enabled all of these, like rise of deepfakes, is actually GANs, Generative Adversarial Networks, deep generative approaches, which are fueled by deep learning, like those input-output relations, and learning to create very realistic samples from the learned distribution. As the data is increasing in image domain, for example, if I want to create a deepfake of you, I need many image samples from you. And then again, we'll learn how to recreate you in the way that we can actually control, or we can modify. Not maybe control exactly where your mouth is, but to reenact things based on another target image or video. All the advancements in deep learning, like novel approaches as GANs or 3D reenactments or learning-based 3D blend shapes, are enabling all those deepfakes. With respect to all of these approaches really being democratized. Deepfakes are not just in research labs anymore. There are many tools that are open sourced and made available to the public.
To make a deepfake, you need an input image or set of images of the target. Let's say we want President Biden to say whatever we want. So we need images of the president. Then we're going to have our own video with our own expressions. And then we're going to apply this transformation to that image, and then suddenly we're going to be able to create this world where Biden's saying whatever we want. Is that correct, in essence?
In a sense, it's correct. It doesn't need to be specific images of one person. That is more towards reenactment or replaying of the actor. In general, GANs can be like imagery of many people, so that you can capture the distribution of those images, especially for image-based deepfakes, like StyleGAN, StarGAN, or StyleGAN 2. And I think there is a very new one, StyleGAN 3, for the listeners that are up to par with the current papers. So for those, you need many images to capture the distribution of that data.
But the target image that you're trying to, like the person who you're trying to fake, if you will, how many images of them do you need? And what are the characterizations of those images?
There are many GANs. There are many approaches you can use. Most of them are in facial domains. It's mostly like a portrait video where the face is segmented and either recreated by those GANs or modified to fit a 3D model. That 3D model may be recreated from an actual, like many multi-view imagery of that person, or it may be a generic 3D model where you fit the textures of that person into that generic 3D model so that you don't represent the detailed 3D geometry, but represent the face and the general fit of the face by the textures, not just the geometry itself. So there are several approaches, but the main thing is like you need that source model or imagery or video and the target imagery video. So if I am being voiced by someone else, I need that someone else's video to source to transfer my new reenactment.
So let's take a specific case. Let's say we've got one image of the target. We've got a video of what we want the target to say. Walk us through at a high level. How is this network learning to transfer the target image onto that animated video of the person speaking with the gestures and everything? What is the high-level learning that takes place? What is the adversarial part of the GAN? And how do we get this model to learn this?
So there are several approaches for that, but especially for the case you mentioned, the GAN has different losses you can manipulate or develop. One of them is the reconstruction loss. What you create at the end, is it similar to what you captured as the input? This is more for if the input and output are known. For example, you are trying to mimic a person smiling, and you already have a smiling version of that face in the training phase. You can actually do reconstruction loss. They're saying that, okay, what I learned through the network, is it creating the same as what I gave as the input? You can do landmark transformation loss, for example, moving the ends of my lips from here to here, which is smile action. If this is in the target and you want to animate the source like that, you can also find the transformation between the landmark points. Are they the same or not? Or are they same on the face manifold? Not in the image manifold, but the face manifold. Are they the same disposition from point A to point B? And of course, that's not for only the mouth landmarks, but all the face landmarks.
So ultimately what you're learning is how to take two images and figure out how to transform one into the other. And you're now applying that transformation to every frame in the video. Is that about right?
Yes, that is one of the ways. So you may learn the transformation, you may learn the morphing, you may learn to create a completely novel image, which is similar to style GAN images, right? Like this person doesn't exist. So that is not trying to transform the image that you already have, but it's trying to create something that doesn't exist from the whole distribution of image space. So generally, those are more image-based GANs. Maybe if the listeners don't know, GANs have a generative part and a discriminative part. Generative part is taking noise and trying to create realistic images and trying to trick the discriminator, saying, look, this is a real image, this is a real image. And discriminator is trying to distinguish between the real ones and the fake ones, trying to catch the generator creating those fake images, saying that, no, this is not realistic enough, this is fake. So to the discriminator, you give the output of the generator and the real images. And in the very basic version of the GAN, you give white noise to actually shift that white noise to the actual distribution of the pixels in the image. This is how, in the very basic version, GANs work, discriminator and the generator. Now, there are many different variations for GANs, like conditional GANs, bidirectional GANs. There's all types of GANs in 2D and 3D. And it all arises from the fact that we can do many different things with the noise. You can put multiple generators or multiple discriminators, or you can condition the output of generator based on the initial distribution, etc. So all of these are enabling those very realistic, very high resolution deepfakes nowadays.
Got it. So let's maybe talk a little bit about what it means to catch a fake. This term fake news has become a huge item in the zeitgeist, and we've been hearing about it in political contexts quite a bit. Within there's a lot of different definitions of fake news, but I think we'd probably agree that having a completely artificially created video of a popular politician or actor, actress, whatever, saying something they never did, or doing something they never did would sort of be a candidate for that, especially if it's passed off as such. So what does it mean to catch these images? Set the context for us. You've got Facebook, Twitter, all these social media platforms. I believe all of them have policies saying they don't want deepfakes on their platforms, but maybe if I'm wrong, enlighten us. What are they doing to go about detecting these fakes? Once they find them, what are they doing? Are they marking them up so everybody knows it's fake?
As deepfakes are rising in quality and quantity, deepfake detection methods are also rising in quality and quantity. There are many different ways to look whether something is a deepfake or not for videos. If you look at the very basic GAN architecture that we just mentioned, the discriminator itself is actually a detector. It's trying to detect whether the thing that comes from the generator is actually fake or not.
When you're training it and it's detecting whether it's fake or not, it's because on one side you've created the image of Joe Biden projected onto this fake video. And then on the other side is that that particular frame of the video is real.
Yes, that's in the training.
Just to be clear, correct, for the audience.
Yeah. For detection, there are several approaches. One of them is to actually look at the GAN and try to find the residual noise that the GAN itself creates without being aware of it in the actual deepfake. You can imagine it as compression artifacts, right? Like in the early days for image forgery, there was JPEG compression artifacts that you can say that, oh yeah, this is not the original image, it is compressed or it is modified, etc. So similar to that, GANs also have those artifacts. Some fake detectors are classifying deepfakes based on those residues. There are more generalized deepfakes, not specific to each GAN because there are so many GANs, right? And those are looking at authenticity. When I talk about authenticity, it is what is unique to humans, right? Like I'm talking here, I'm looking at you, I have a consistency by myself. We can call these like biological signals or physiological signals. And those authenticity-based deepfake detectors are trying to find what is special to real videos as opposed to fake videos.
So the difference between the detector in the GAN that built the deep fake and the one you're describing is that the former is built primarily and solely based on that video that it's trying to create a fake of, and the other one is able to learn across a much larger library of movies. Did I understand that right?
No, both of them are on many images or videos. The distinction is that the first discriminator is specific to its generator. So it's not working in detectors for other fakes created by other generators. Yes. But in the generalized version of deepfake detectors, it is any given video. It may even be the case that those videos are post-processed. So maybe there's a deepfake of me, but you change the background, change the lighting, or compress the video. Those generalized deepfake detectors are still expected to find that it is fake.
So where does this wind up? I mean, is this ultimately a cat and mouse game between the level of compute resources and data you use to train the detector versus the level of compute resources you use to create a fake? And we're overall trying to just have the quote good guys on one side with a lot more GPU and CPU capability train a more accurate detector, or is it a different game than that?
As you said, it's an arms race, right? The more high quality GANs we have, the more high quality detectors we hope we have. For the residues, the GANs are also getting better in that space, trying to not create those side effects or side signals. But for the authenticity signals, that's a little bit harder for GANs to replicate. Some of those authenticity signals, for example, one of them is the gaze that we use. If you want to design a GAN, you can try to build that loss function with the eye and gaze features and try to learn those like eye and gaze features so that you can create more realistic deepfakes. But there are other signals that are really not that easy to mimic. For example, PPG signals. PPG is short for photoplethysmography. Photoplethysmography is detecting heart rate from video remotely. There are color changes on my skin due to oxygen in my veins. We can use that signal to detect deepfakes. This signal is really hard to replicate because it needs very complex correlations between many places on your face. Their spatial, temporal, and spectral correlation should be preserved, and it is very hard for a GAN to learn that still.
Are these signals that a regular human has a lot of intuition about? Does this fall into the uncanny valley where we just know something strange about this image, but we don't know what? Or is this something that flies under the radar of a normal
You may not see it. It is invisible to the eye, but computationally it is visible. If you remember, there was an MIT paper that was changing the color of a baby based on the heart rate. If you amplify those PPG signals on the video, you can actually see your heart rate changing color. I am going from white to red, red to white based on my heart rate if you amplify those signals. But without that amplification, it is not visible to the eye.
Have data, have a hypothesis on some high-value insights that, if extracted automatically, could transform your business? Not sure how to proceed? Bounce your ideas off one of our data scientists with a free consult. Reach out at xionics.com. You'll talk to an expert, not a salesperson. So if you can leverage a signal like that, some kind of biological signal on the detection side, then why can't you leverage that sort of a signal on the fake creation side?
Yeah, as I just said before, the relations of those signals from many places in your face is really hard to replicate. So you need to keep their spectral correlation, temporal correlation, you need to keep their spatial correlation, and the GAN is not able to learn all of that. The formulation of the PPG signals is not very intuitive to put into a loss function that you can backpropagate, because that is not a linear process to extract the PPG signals. Even if you want to approximate PPG signals instead of extracting them by the actual function, you need very large PPG data sets to learn approximating it from. And there is not such large data sets that are with like actual PPG signals. There are some remote data sets, there are some small data sets, but they are not really comprehensive enough that you can represent the PPG signal for the whole population, for all the skin tones, for all the ages, etc. So that's why it's very hard to replicate PPG signals in fakes.
So how effective are these deepfake detectors?
That's a very good question. And the answer depends on the data set. For different data sets, for example, the PPG-based detector that I mentioned, we have all the way from 93% to 99% on state-of-the-art academic data sets. Those data sets are relatively large, like thousands of videos and millions of image frames. And we can have up to 99% accuracy.
Is that accuracy at the video level or at the frame level?
A video level. Video level. We actually have 3 levels.
Because you're kind of honing on this heartbeat, like?
Yes. Like imagine like your heartbeat sinusoidal signal, right? Mm-hmm. So we are extracting that signal from many places on your face.
From all the pixel changes on the face.
Yeah, yeah. And then we are correlating them spatially, spectrally, and temporally. So even if there are some image distortions or lighting changes or some part of the image you don't see the face or there's very fast movements, you can still see that enough of them agrees for real ones, and for fake ones, they are everywhere. There is no structure, no periodicity for it.
So in the case of a real video of a human face or body, if you track any one pixel on one point of the face, over time, it's going to have this sinusoidal periodicity, and that's because it's tracking the heartbeat of the human. Mm-hmm. In the fakes, they're not so concerned about that. They're optimizing for authenticity in a general perceptual way. And in that case, this is like a byproduct that neither the deepfake generators or humans really hone in on.
Yeah.
That's clever. So how did anyone ever, like, what was the original scenario for detecting heartbeats from the face? How did that come about in the first place?
The origins of remote PPG signals are to monitor patients through video. So if a patient cannot go to the hospital, they need some care, they can just look at the video and see that their heart is beating as normal, or they have heart rate, etc. Especially when the babies are in those glass areas where you cannot go and touch or do some measurements on the baby, you can actually remotely look that, like, okay, baby is still breathing, still the heart rate is this, etc., etc. So that was more like remote patient monitoring.
So I want to switch directions a little bit. I think some of our audience members might be really wondering this. And I think this is something that a lot of my non-technical friends always ask. They always ask, like, why the heck did you build this garbage with whatever tech has gone wrong? at any point in time. The inevitable question here, which I think most people who are non-technical overlook, is there's usually an incredible amount of positive uses of a technology. So maybe walk us through some legitimate uses of these GANs and the deepfake capabilities. I think a lot of them that maybe on the surface you don't think about. Like the one that comes to mind for me, if I think about Hollywood and the amount of money it takes to make a video with a 3D character that looks hyper real, you have to animate, create this 3D puppet, if you will, that you can then go off and try to map this to an actor or actress. As they move, this character moves. When I started looking at that, I started thinking, imagine if you could bring the cost of that down. You don't need 200 animators working around the clock to make a movie appear that way. You can now just learn it. Walk us through some of the legit scenarios that you see for deepfakes that's probably driving a lot of this work, because there's relatively limited R&D money coming out of people just spoofing videos on the internet.
Yeah, those spoofing videos are probably like I don't know, maybe us as researchers are a little bit guilty because we open source all of our approaches, but maybe we shouldn't. Nevertheless, the first research approaches that are enabling deepfakes were for legit uses such as digital humans. In AR and VR, now that we are going into metaverse, we want to...
I actually had metaverse here, so we have to talk about that because it's in the news these days.
So we want to be ourselves in that metaverse, right? Like in AR and VR worlds.
Sure.
How do we do that? We cannot actually look at what we are seeing, so we need to create ourselves in 3D. And how do we do that? Deepfakes or facial reenactment or 3D deepfakes. That was one of the first cases, like avatars and digital humans, that this research was supporting. Another one is, as you said, for visual effects and relieving us from physical dependencies, right? If we want an actor to be in our movie, but that actor cannot travel or they have some limitations, we can actually do deepfakes of them so that the stunt or the physically not possible situation is by the normal video of those people. One of the realistic examples we had in our studio, in Intel Studios, was that, for example, because of COVID, so there was an AR series, okay? So there's episodes of famous actor that are doing something in AR.
What's AR in this context, just for our audience?
Augmented reality. VR, virtual reality, AR, augmented reality.
So you're saying you have an actor, what do you have, a stunt person or something that's doing the stunt, and now you got to put the actor onto the stunt person?
Yeah, so that's one of the use cases. The use case I was mentioning is that AR series that we were shooting in the studio. That is like a 3D series that you can play anywhere you like. You with the mobile device, you watch a series on your table that the actors are talking, the athletes are running or jumping or whatever sports they are doing. So we shot the first 2 episodes of this, and the 3rd episode there was COVID, so no one was able to come to the studio so that we can 3D capture them. Basically. Because of COVID, yeah. For the main person presenting everyone, like all the athletes, we had his earlier captures in 3D and 2D. So we just let him record a 2D video of himself in his home. We applied facial reenactment to take that video and make the 3D capture we had from previous episodes talk and move like whatever he's doing in a 2D video. So that is the most realistic legit case that we use deepfakes in our studio.
Yeah, and I think that's, like everybody's been kind of making fun of this metaverse lately, but I think, 25, 30 years ago, I kind of got into this stuff and spent some time back when VRML and everybody thought the 3D internet was going to happen around the corner. But now it does seem like we're getting a lot closer to some sort of world because a good chunk of the workforce is working remote now. Right now, we're talking over a Zoom call, interacting in a flat 2D way. But if you look at some of the work coming out of Facebook Reality Labs, they've got these full 3D avatars where you could put both of us into a 3D space. We can have this very hyper realistic rendering of us that's now put onto a 3D model that was built for us. They actually have some kind of super chair. They have a ton of cameras that get every facial expression you can possibly make. They capture it all, and somehow you can project your imagery flattened in front of your computer, put it onto this puppet and move it around in the 3D space. So what's the state of the art there? What's the state of the art of this kind of puppetry scenario? Have we gotten to the point where we can handle The uncanny valley problem that you see. How close are we getting to being able to take me and you and move this conversation from 2D Zoom into a 3D metaverse world and have both of us genuinely move around in that space and not have it look cartoonish or creepy?
There are trade-offs in that world, right? And all the research is trying to balance or find a middle ground in this trade-off. So the two ends are scaling and details. For the Facebook case, the setup is small enough that the cameras and lighting sources are close enough to the face so that you can get pore level details in your facial capture. And then, of course, with codec avatars and other technologies from FRL, you can carry that conversation into there. But in that case, you may be very realistic upper body, but below we don't see, or the capture resolution is not good. That good. And the other end is scaling to the actual world, right? So in that case, I will give you an example from Intel Studios. We had that 10,000 square foot dome. We can put everything inside and capture in a 3D in a volumetric fashion. And the listeners can Google that and find the...
Tell me more about this. What's the dome? What are they capturing? Yeah. The setting for folks.
First, Intel Studios is a huge dome where you can do 3D capture. Volumetric filmmaking, the future of volumetric filmmaking. Mm-hmm. So in that huge area, just like if you have seen that, like the capture stage of Facebook or Google also has that, just like make it like maybe 10 times bigger in volume. And you can put up to 30 people dancing and moving there. You can put horses running there. You can put little buildings.
And it's going to capture full body motion data that they can use to project somewhere else.
Exactly. You can reconstruct everything inside there. We already have AR and VR productions. As I mentioned, two of the VR shorts we captured in the studio actually premiered in Venice Film Festival. Those are the very first versions of full body, full environment capture that we did in the studio. They are real, they're out there. You can go and watch in VR the real digitization of the world. There's also a demo scene that we shot in the studio at the very early stage where there was a real horse running in the dome, and we can capture even like the dust particles that are flying around the horse in 3D. So that is like the realism that you get. And that enables so many possibilities. For example, in the real world, maybe you may not be able to see the world from the horse's point of view, right? You cannot just put a camera on the horse, it will fall or something. But when you do it volumetrically, you can actually put your camera everywhere. It's a 3D world. You can watch from everywhere. And you don't even need to project it in 2D. Like you can let the audience watch from wherever you want. They may be the God point of view. They may watch it from the person that is being beaten, or they may watch it from the horse, you know?
Because these people who are in this dome world, are they all instrumented with cameras?
No, they are free.
So does the dome itself have the cameras and it's able to project into any 3D point?
Yes. So the dome itself has 100 cameras, all of them recording in 8K resolution. We have 270 gigabyte per second data coming from all of those cameras.
I see. I can imagine like the appeal to a director, you know, for making a film is A, I don't have to go on set. B, I can have much more fantastical sets. C, I don't have to reshoot from different angles and scenes. I just have them acted out, and then I can do that in post-production where I'm moving the camera all throughout the scene. I mean, that seems pretty compelling. And it's and this is like, map it back to the deep fakes. Like, what's the technical linkage to the deep fake world here?
As I said, like 3D deepfakes is something that we can do. So the first capture of that person, of that actor that I mentioned, was done in the dome. But if we want to reanimate it, him doing something else or saying something else, we can actually do the 3D deepfake version of it. We can also, as I said, like in the dome, we can relieve the physical limitations of the world. So normally how, like, I'm not a visual effects person, but normally how 3D visual effects are done is by compositing, by putting like layer by layer, or by object detection and like applying those object detection into, applying the visual effects to the objects that are being in focus or something. But when you capture everything in 3D, you actually have the world. Like you have all the spatial relations all the empty volume or all the non-empty volume, you have everything. So if you want to add an object, if you want to make some smoke simulation, if you want to add some fires, everything is spatially very accurate. So that is another step towards like 3D movies and 3D visual effects, that we can actually do everything much more realistically because you have the real 3D information there. So deepfakes also cover those like scene manipulation, fake objects, like any manipulation that you do in the video or the actual effect, right? So those are the things that you can do much more, completing the world of deepfakes in a sense.
Have a ton of data, don't know where to start? Chat with one of our principal data scientists at xionyx.com. That's XYONIX.com. You'll talk to an expert, not a salesperson. So let's jump ahead 10 years. What does the world look like? And let's look at it from a few different angles. So let's first take the news. Mm-hmm. In the news case, we don't have prolific deepfakes kind of consuming the news yet, but we have an alternate reality amongst a good 30-40% of our population. People believe all kinds of bizarre, crazy things that are completely unlinked to reality, whether it's the January 6th insurrection about the election, or whether it's like anti-vax conspiracy theories. Even without all of this ability to try to explain to somebody that what they're seeing is not what they're seeing, even with just simple text and simple actual true videos and actual true data, we're still failing to convince a good chunk of our population to live in reality and to process reality in something akin to what's true. How much worse is this going to get in 10 years, or is it going to get better? And how are we going to get people who already don't believe things when we actually show them footage that denies everything they believe in? We actually show them data and they still won't believe it. How are we going to get them to believe it when with their own eyes, they can see their crazy conspiracy things walking around the internet and moving around in videos?
Right. I think to answer that question, we need different shades of glasses, just like yours. We either have that very dark glasses that we are looking to that dystopian future.
For our audience's benefit, I have some orange tinted glasses because fall here in Seattle is very dark. And I thought if I can have Instagram filters on my photos, then why not in my reality?
So yeah, if we have that very dark dystopian glasses versus the utopian glasses where everything is very nicely. So I want to discuss those. Hopefully we will be some in the middle, but I want to first look at the utopian case. So in Intel, we are looking at provenance as a long-term option. So detection is kind of working right now. It may work a little bit, then GANs may get better, etc. So detection may be an intermediate solution that we are marking or warning everyone, etc. But if you have
just to be clear, so in the provenance case, I'm the AP Newswire. I'm a credible organization. I have a cameraman sitting or a camerawoman sitting in wherever, Afghanistan, France, whatever. I know that their hardware produced this camera, and then somehow in that image or in that video, I know that I can track that provenance all the way back to the organization with credibility. Is that the high-level concept?
All the way from the capture device to the consumer, you need that verification, which can't be spoofed, which is secure, so that whenever you are probably watching this video, there is a check mark or some authenticity here saying that, okay, this is all the way. We know the origin. We know it is not modified from the origin. The origin was this credible source or this not credible source, but this was the origin. The provenance of it.
So how do you encode that and how do you not spoof the origin, right? Maybe it would be Apple saying that I filmed it on a laptop. Maybe it would be Zoom saying that I was running this version of Zoom on this laptop. And then maybe it's, my company Xionyx that's saying that I've got this laptop. How does that move with this video or podcast or whatever, through the internet?
And just as you said, there are several entry points that you can do. So if we can gather all the camera manufacturers and give some kind of hash or watermark that they can put, which can't be spoofed with algorithms or like, I don't know, even with blockchain or something, then they can have that token all the way through the pipeline. Or it may be the Zoom in the software case that somehow Zoom knows that from camera to Zoom software, there has not been any modification or interception, so that Zoom can authenticate that, okay, this is what I get, and this is the watermark. If there's any modification, any fake, any alteration to this video, the watermark will vanish or something. There are different cases for this provenance approach, which we are still exploring, and we are still trying to build that consortium around it. And when we have that, we want like all of those companies, software hardware companies, to be on par, because deepfakes for bad users, we still don't want, like no one wants deepfakes to be around. There's also provenance for GANs, right? For positive use cases, we can also have provenance approaches inside those GANs, so that when GANs create something fake, we know the origin of the GAN, and we know who created that GAN, and we know like which algorithm created or which dataset created that GAN. And for positive use cases, we will still have that watermark of authenticity. If you are, for example, using Adobe software and you are using neural feed filters, you want those neural feed filters. You want your face to be, I don't know, like beautiful, right? But Adobe can actually like mark that, saying that this is an authentic GAN. This is like, it is a GAN still, but it is like a verified GAN. So those are the provenance approaches we are talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a ton of sense for, kind of rational, geeky people like us, like you and I. We can, I can say, hey, this makes sense. Ilke, I saw your video. I know some organization that I trust went in and validated that the whole chain lines up for the video that I'm watching. It just seems really complex for people who are already susceptible to bizarre conspiracy theories. Like you and I can understand this, but can somebody who is invading the Capitol on January 6th, are they going to buy into this or just twist it into some new conspiracy theory? I mean, it feels like we're entering a world where even the most basic things, negative actors are able to manipulate them and cause effect in the world in a way that you couldn't do 40 or 50 years ago, or even maybe 5 years ago. Sure, if a credible organization like the New York Times, they're not going to put up some completely obviously manipulated video. But we saw with even very old school technologies, somebody had manipulated one of the, I think it was Nancy Pelosi or somebody's, they manipulated the speed of the video and turned it into a whole a fake news item. So I think it's just going to be really hard to convince the masses that the video that they're watching with their own eyes is fake. I think what they did was, if I'm remembering, they sped up the rate of the video and somehow it manipulated the scenario to appear one way versus another. It just feels like we're losing. In the big picture, what we're looking at is a gigantic failure to get folks to consider credibility of human who's making a statement, credibility of organizations, including companies and government entities. We're just failing to get people to take that sort of credibility into account when they determine what's real and what's not.
That is, like, in some publications, we actually formulated this as social erosion of trust.
Yes, so, that's probably the perfect 3 words to pick. Yes, that's exactly what's happening. Right? I mean, I have very bright friends who are like, I don't know what to believe. And, I'm trying to explain my highly nuanced way of parsing reality. And it's not a simple thing anymore because we have such a distortion of economic incentives for distorted reality.
One of the point of views that we haven't talked about is actually legal ways to stop deepfakes. And I am not an expert in that at all. It's just based on my very limited conversations with my colleagues that are specializing in that area. But we also hope that some legislations and some actual laws that are stopping deepfakes from being spread, being generated, being trained, etc., may decrease the speed of the deepfakes a little bit, even if we cannot stop them totally.
I mean, you can imagine some just overt penalties for creating a deep fake without disclosing it. I mean, it's one thing to do it for entertainment purposes. It's another thing to do it with clear malicious intent. And I don't know the state of the law, but I'm going to guess it's so far behind on basic internet issues that it's probably virtually non-existent in this case, but I'm sure there's some precedent law that helps out. So we talked about the 10 years ahead on the news front. What's the 10 years ahead vision you have in the metaverse front? First of all, before we put a value judgment on it, like, what do you think it is? Like, is it the case that you and I are going to be meeting in a spatial audio, 3D immersive world? We're both wearing glasses in 10 years. We've got wonderful audio. We've got, wonderful video. We can walk around a table. We can even maybe there's even some tactile feedback.
It all depends on how much free we will be of all the hardware and all the things that we need to sense and receive the virtual world as physical. So maybe the question is that I definitely believe that we will be in 3D. We will be having this conversation in 3D and maybe walking each other, like looking wherever we want. I don't need to look at you. I can look wherever I want. But the problem is, how much weight will I be carrying on my head? Or will it be glasses like yours, like that? Or will it be like a contact lens? Or will my whole environment be projected there somehow? Or is it just my, keyboard here and some background will be projected there? So I think the answer to that, will we be doing this in 3D?
I would have agreed with you. Like, let me tell you something. In 1995, I worked at an R&D lab back in Massachusetts. Every day for a good 3 or 4 weeks of my life, I would wake up, go to work, enter a 3D world. And in that 3D world, I had spatialized audio. I was a disembodied head. I could blink. I had facial gestures. And I would meet with an architect who was architecting a 3D world that we were building. I would meet with a scene designer in the world. We were all disembodied heads walking around, all in 3D. That experience to this day is better than the experience I have right now with you talking to you. And that was, a long time ago. And it's mind-boggling to me that we still don't meet that way. So I guess I'm like way more skeptical than everybody else. Like, now you want me to actually put something on my face, in my eyes, or on my head. Like, I don't know. People have been predicting that the 2D internet's going to go to a 3D internet since forever. And on top of that, we thought we were late at that time because there were environments like Habitude in the 70s that were already doing this sort of thing. So why now? Just because, you've got these like improved VR headsets? Like what just because we have maybe a good chunk of the population like spending a lot of time in, World of Warcraft and more advanced 3D environments. And so then when they have a conference call, they still want to be there. Like, what's the theory as to why now?
There are several fronts for that, but I completely agree. For example, Ramesh Raskar from MIT, which was also my postdoc advisor, he has a paper called Office of the Future from 90s, from that time, saying that in future, our offices will be fully 3D, all the holograms everywhere, very futuristic thing. And even that time, we know that we were going to end up there. I think the blockers were seriously like the compute power. So we didn't have this much powerful chips and powerful, Moore's law, right? Like the transistor.
Yeah, sure.
We didn't have this much small compute power to actually power the headsets. And power like that affects the form factor a lot, because we don't want something very hot on your head. You don't want something very heavy on your head. You don't want to be plugged into the computer for that computational power, right? So these are all affecting that form factor. Another one is adoption, for example. How many big companies were actually trying to make that community, make that like 3D realm where you can actually have your own space and own, I recently heard the news about real estate agents trying to find parcels in 3D metaverse. Like, this is like all of the sectors, all of the parts of economy trying to find their portion in that 3D world. That was not the case because it was not as realistic. It was not as adopted. Now that like those big companies are actually taking a stance in metaverse, everyone is like, yeah, this is happening. This is there. I want to be a part of it. And not only the researchers and scientific people, but also the general public is trying to go towards adoption in 3D. Although I don't know whether I want to support his point of view, but maybe it is a little bit like valid point. We went to the mobile world, like the transition to mobile world was not like really that easy, right? Like we didn't have that very sophisticated mobile phones in a day. We had all the way from the actual home phones that didn't have cables, then the smaller effective touch screens, everything with our faces, etc. Right? So VR is also going there. If you remember the very old VRs headsets, like you need to be plugged, or maybe there were like the room space VR devices that you go like a spaceship, etc. Right? From all the way to the glasses, hopefully to the glasses that you carry right now, we are following the same transition from that phone to the room space VR devices to the glasses.
All right. Well, thanks a ton. I mean, I think this was a fascinating conversation. I know we covered a lot of terrain. So thanks so much for taking the time for enlightening us with your perspective, Ilke.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a very fun conversation. Maybe just as a last note, hopefully we will have real-time deepfake detection platform based on fake catcher algorithm that I talked about. So whenever it is online, everyone can go and upload whatever video you want and see whether it is fake or not.
That's all for your AI injection. Many thanks to Ilke Demir for being such an enlightening guest. You can find out more about Ilke's work at ilkedemir.weebly.com. That's ilkedemir.weebly.com. As always, thanks so much for tuning in. We're a new podcast, so please tell your friends about us, give us a review, and any other social media love you can. You can also check out our past podcast episodes at podcast.xionics.com or on your regular podcast platform.